Good day, everyone. I'm your host, Lee Judge, and welcome to today's webinar entitled The ROI of Making Your IVR Visual, brought to you by Jacada. Our presenter today is Chris Dutoy, Director of Product Marketing at Jacada. Today, we will take a quick look at the return on investing in a Visual IVR, and for those of you who are new to the concept, exactly what Visual IVR is, how it can improve your customer experience, and see how easily it can be implemented. So let's begin. The presentation's all yours, Chris.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. And we know your time is precious, so we aim to make these webinars informative and quick and get to the point so we can get you back on your busy days. As Lee mentioned, our topic today is Visual IVR, and specifically the ROI behind going visual on your IVR. And we'll go with a ROI calculator, and I hope that you can follow along and even plug in your own numbers to reflect your organization and get a feeling for what kind of what kind of return you would get on a Visual IVR. I'd like to give thanks to Lee for organizing all of this. Just the fact that you're here today means that Lee found you and you were kind enough to register for our webinars. Thank you, Lee. Just some housekeeping items. We will have time for Q&A at the end of this. Even if we are running out of time, please go ahead and submit your questions. If we don't get to it online, we will absolutely get back to you personally via email after the webinar. So by all means, at any time, just ask your questions and we'll make sure we get them addressed. Also, Lee did mention this, but it bears repeating. Under the attendee window, you only see yourself. But don't worry, you aren't the only attendee. The others are just being blocked for privacy concerns. So thank you again, and let's get started with our webinar. What you'll see today is we're going to look at a quick look at the state of the IVR industry today, and then a little bit about what a Visual IVR is for those of you who are just joining on the call who haven't really attended any of these sessions before. And then looking at the ROI behind the Visual IVR, and we'll use a calculator and we'll walk you through that, and you can follow along and see how that goes. So I thought, what better way to start a webinar on Visual IVR to get your reaction at this slide. Thank you for calling. Please listen carefully as our menu options have recently changed. For billing inquiries, please press 1. For account changes, please press 2. For cancellations, please press 3. My guess is that doesn't probably resonate very well with you, yet we subject our customers to this every day, every time they call. And we know the IVR is a very necessary part of our organization and our customer service experience, but there's no denying that this is not really our preferred way of communicating with a customer. So let's take a look at the IVR and what I call warning signs for your IVR, or the canary in the coal mine. When your IVR zero out rate is approaching more than 7%, so by zero out, we mean the number of customers who will just, the very first time they hear, please listen carefully, the very first thing they do is reach for that zero key. They want to talk to an operator. They don't want to listen to your menu options. That's what we mean by zero out. So when your zero out rate is more than 7%, there's a warning sign. There's no industry average or standard as to what is an acceptable percentage, but based on our experience and talk to our customers, when this starts approaching more than 7%, it's certainly something you've got to keep an eye on. And we've heard stories of zero out rates exceeding 20%, which is hard to imagine, a quarter or maybe even a quarter of your users hitting the zero key and not really using your IVR. The second warning sign that your IVR is not what it should be, when customers reach an agent, they're already frustrated. And think about this. This is not a good way to start a customer interaction. You funnel them through a set of confusing menu options, or even worse, through poor voice recognition, and then by the time they reach you, they're already upset. So then you have to ask yourself, what was the benefit of funneling them through this, that I've got an upset customer before I've even tried to resolve their problem? Certainly something to keep an eye on. The third warning sign for your IVR is when the percentage of call transfers inside your call center is excessive. This is a sign of poor menu choices. So the customer ends up in the wrong queue and needs to be transferred. So you need to keep an eye on this internal transfer rate, or how many bounces you get internally once the customer reaches an agent. If this is excessive, chances are they're getting confused by menu options. The fourth warning sign for your IVR is when your website is listed on sites instructing callers how to zero out. I say that somewhat jokingly, but there's this big measure of truth there. There are websites dedicated to showing your customers how to bypass the IVR. Which series of DTMF sequences should they dial to get straight to an operator? So obviously we're doing something wrong in the customer service industry when we're creating an ecosystem of sites that are geared to telling our customers how to bypass our IVR. That wasn't the original intent behind our IVR, certainly something to keep an eye on. And then one of the big warning signs that your IVR is in trouble is when you don't want to call your own call center. And I've had this happen to me when my cable modem went out and I phoned my cable provider to come over and fix the modem. They sent a technician out. The technician realized that the modem was shot and they had to replace the modem. They give me a new modem and they now have to provision the modem. And what they do is they phone the technical support to provision a new modem. And believe it or not, that tech support agent has to phone the same 1-800 number that you or I would phone. And he was stuck in his own IVR and cursing in my house and being more upset than I think I was as a customer. So obviously not a good thing when you don't want to phone your own call center. So let's be clear, people don't hate IVR self-service, they hate bad self-service. There are some wonderful IVR implementations that we've all come across, and then there are those that are not good. And so it's not the IVR itself that's to blame. Often it's just we're forced to implement it in a certain way. So what are the things that customers that hate? And this slide's kind of easy to put together, because if I'd asked all of you right here on the webinar, what do you hate when you phone a company and deal with the IVR, you'd probably come up with very much the same options. The first is when you're forced to listen to long introductory prompts. Sometimes we've seen introductory prompts exceeding 1 minute. And trust me, when I'm calling back for the third time with the same issue, I'd really hope that you try and understand my call first before trying to upsell me or give me this long 1 minute introductory prompt. So keep an eye on those. Don't keep them too long. The second thing that we hate about bad self-service is when the menu options are so long, you can't remember which one you should have chosen. And in a generation of Twitter, we consume 140 characters at a time. So by the 7th menu option, I don't remember the first 3. So try not to make your menu trees that big that they're that confusing, or forcing the person to take notes as they're listening to the IVR tree. The third option is when the menu options are confusing. Should I choose 3? No, wait, 2. Yes, 2 was the right one. What is the difference between account services and option 3, which is account inquiries? Sometimes they're confusing, and what happens is the customer select the wrong one. And then back to our first slide, we talked about the internal bounce rate. I select account services, I reach an agent, and they say, oh, you actually need to be at account inquiries, and they bounce me over. So we don't like these confusing menu options. Make them clear. Another problem with these is when there's no clear navigation path. I've gone down 4 trees, 4 branches. I realize, wait a minute, how do I get back? So, let me hit the asterisk. Oh, no, that took me back to the beginning and I have to start all over. Give me a clear breadcrumb or navigation path that makes it very easy for me to navigate up and down the tree, at least as easy as it can be on an audio experience. And then the fifth thing we hate about bad self-service is, why should I enter anything in here when the first thing you're going to ask me to do when I connect is you're going to ask me for the information again. So please either fix that screen pop so that the information shows up, or don't ask me for that information. I understand sometimes there's compliance and verification purposes, but please don't ask me to enter everything and then ask me for that information again the moment I connect with a voice call. We've almost come to expect it, yet we still get very irritated by it. So sometimes people say, well, wait a minute, isn't the IVR dying? So let's look at the top IVR trends and predictions as we see them. First, social media will not replace the IVR. There's been a lot of buzz about social media, and in reality, what we find with social media is very much just reputation management, monitoring the social media channels and trying to ensure that there's nothing damaging being said by the company. But it has not become a focal customer touch point in terms of solving your customer support issues or reaching the organization in the first place. So social media, as we see it, is not replacing the IVR. The demand for multiple touch points will increase, the two C's. And I call the two C's, it's consistency and continuity. The consistency means I need to get the same information from your company regardless of how I'm touching your company. You know, if your website tells me that it's a 2-year contract, but the agent on the phone is telling me it's an 18-month contract, and the IVR was telling me that it's a 16-month contract, I'm getting conflicting information, and so I need consistency across the channels. It sounds obvious, but it's very difficult for many companies to implement because we all use different technologies across different channels. But the demand for this is going to increase. We need the consistency. The other C is the continuity aspect. If I start my transaction in the morning before work on the website to, for example, book my plane reservation, and then I jump in the car to get to work and I phone you, let's have continuity across that transaction. Understand that I was making a plane reservation and have my details in front of you so I don't have to start the interaction from the beginning. The next generation of IVRs will need to emphasize self-service. It's no secret, of course. IVRs in many cases are used as a call deflection mechanism and sometimes purposely making it hard for customers to reach you. But as we see IVRs mature, we're seeing a bigger emphasis on self-service. It's not just a routing engine. It is trying to reduce inbound call volume, but through adequate self-service options. And so we see IVRs really expanding in this area and becoming better at creating self-service type interactions. Voice XML will become the standard. Newer IVRs already support it, and the legacy ones will support it, or face being labeled legacy forever. So we do see Voice XML as a standard for implementing these IVRs. And finally, IVRs are going to remain a fundamental channel. It's no doubt about it. It's just the way people interact with it may change. So I want to be clear. We know the IVR is important. The IVR teams work incredibly hard to make this as good an experience as possible in the face of changing requirements from the business all the time. And the IVRs will remain there. It's just the way we interact with it may change or expand. And then, of course, mobile doesn't really help the problem. We spoke about the issues with IVRs that we as customers don't like, and it just really gets exacerbated in the mobile world. It doesn't lend itself well to the mobile mindset. And if you think about it for a second, when you're working with your iPhone or your Android, every time you need to push another menu option, you have to take the phone away from your ear, look at the screen, push the next option, then put it back to your ear to listen to the next tree. And you do this for 4 or 5 trees navigating through that IVR. It's very difficult. And so it doesn't really lend itself well to that mobile mindset. As a result, what happens, of course, it's just easier to zero out than to navigate the tree. And that's what we spoke about right up front, is this high zero out rate, because quite frankly, sometimes that's just easier. So the goal when we look at something like Visual IVR is to channel more of these IVR calls to be an effective self-service offering. If we can reduce those inbound calls, of course, that's a lot of money saved. And from a customer perspective, if we can resolve their challenge, that's a win-win. For the calls that do come in, there are the complex calls. You're always going to need to speak to somebody. But when they do call in, let's know more about them and what they want. Let's not ask them for all that information again and upset them right at the get-go. And ultimately decrease the amount of zero-outs that we see in these IVRs. So this is what we call Visual IVR. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it really is providing a visual interface based off of your IVR, so that you can get the benefits of your IVR and reuse and extend your IVR investment and leverage that in both the mobile and the web channels. So as you can see here, a depiction on a phone, as a user, I would just click reservations, new flight reservation before reaching an operator. Clearly a simplistic example, but you get the sense that it's visual and I see the menu options versus trying to listen to them one by one. And don't underestimate the power of actually integrating Visual IVR on your website. If you take a moment to think, how are your customers reaching you? There's a good chance they're already on your website, or they're going to Google your number to find your website, to find your contact number. So many of your users are actually going to start the initiation or the interaction on your website. With Visual IVR, you can actually extend your IVR directly into your website by letting the user start the IVR experience right there. So in this example, the user clicks contact, and instead of showing the phone numbers, we start the IVR transaction right there, and you can click your way through that IVR and ultimately choosing the right options so that you get routed to the right agent and get a better call and start the interaction sort of in context to what the user was doing. So in short, Visual IVR will take your existing IVR, that audio experience, and map it visually for both your mobile customers and your web customers. There's, of course, certain benefits. Once you've gone visual only, you can support alphanumeric data, which is clearly something that's limiting on DTMF dialing, which is what's limited a lot of what IVR can do from a self-service capability, of course, because of that lack of alphanumeric or easy alphanumeric support. So clearly that helps being able to add that, and being able to add a back button so that you can actually navigate back up the tree very easily versus trying to hit the asterisk or the 0 and hitting the wrong option and starting all over again. And then ultimately the no repeating of information by putting a rich screen pop in front of the agent so that the agent can see everything that the customer has done up to that point of the call coming in. And so we can avoid that "may I have your account number again" scenario. And ultimately, Visual IVR delivers a better experience. Visual is far more efficient than listening to audio. I can scan a screen, either my smartphone screen or my website, far quicker than I can listening to a list of those instructions. And as I mentioned, it's not uncommon for that introductory prompt alone to be over 1 minute, and then I'm sort of forced to listen to that before I can select the next menu option. Just very quickly as to how does it work. It works with your existing IVR, and this is a point I need to stress, that your IVR today, depicted here in number 1, is likely using something called VXML or Voice XML. That Voice XML is really sort of converted or rendered as those audio prompts that a user gets on their phone. Please push 1 for billing, 2 for account services. It's really taking that VXML and just giving you the audio representation of it. So we do largely the same thing. We take those existing VXML apps that you have or scripts, and through our Visual IVR server, we will render them in real time as visual options either on your phone or on your website. So it's reusing your existing IVR scripts. You're not creating a new set of IVR scripts. The whole intent behind Visual IVR is to work side by side with your existing IVR and just give you additional channels that your IVR can use. And so then, as a user, I can see them visually and then ultimately route to an agent using your existing telephony infrastructure. So it's not a big operation. We're not coming in and replacing everything in your organization. We want to reuse your existing IVR, reuse your existing VXML scripts, and reuse your existing telephony infrastructure. So a very non-invasive sort of touch point to your existing setup. So you might be thinking, okay, it sounds good, but what's the ROI behind this? And it's a good question, and that's what we want to look at in this webinar. What we'll do is we'll model a sample company, and you can follow along by using the link in your chat window. Lee will send out the link to the Visual IVR calculator, or by all means, you can just watch me and follow along with me, and then at a later time, when you have the metrics for your organization, you can go plug them in and try it for yourself and see what you can do. Obviously, with any ROI model, we need to make some assumptions. And in the calculator, we give you the ability to play with those assumptions to kind of do a what-if type analysis and sort of play with different permutations and combinations and see how the ROI might work in your organization. So I've made some assumptions, and I'll highlight them as I go through it, but just remember you can change it. So what I'm going to do is work with a company of around 60,000 calls per month. Of course, we've got a very diverse audience base on the call today, some with much smaller organizations, some with much larger organizations. I've opted to use a fictitious company of about 60,000 calls per month as a frame of reference. And obviously, you can adjust that based on your organization as well, and feel free to change that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. Great. And Lee, I would ask for an audio confirmation that you're able to see the desktop.
Yes, we can see it.
Great, thank you. So what we're showing here is the Visual IVR ROI calculator. And again, Lee will send you out this link so you can play along with your own numbers. So let me orientate you and sort of walk you through what you're seeing here. All the fields in an orange or yellow color are fields that are requiring your input because they're actual inputs to the model that are needed. And we can look here. So I mentioned 60,000 calls per month. And obviously you would adjust this as necessary. Minutes per call in terms of how long your current calls take. Obviously it's something in a troubleshooting technical support industry that might be higher, or in a customer service situation that might be lower. I'm using 4 minutes here. The agent transfers per month. These are the number of transfers that happen once the customer reaches an agent. We mentioned that internal transfer rate because of poor menu options or confusing menu options. This is that number I was referring to, is when the agent bounces the caller to somebody else the moment they reach the agent. So it does have an effect on our ROI. So if you have that number, great, use it. The current self-service success percentage. So this is important, of course. This is the success that you're getting in your IVR today. So of the callers coming into your IVR, what we're saying here is that 35% are able to resolve the call in the IVR today successfully without needing to escalate that to a voice call. Obviously, that's going to vary from industry to industry and company to company, but this is what we mean by this number. So if you have that number, that's what you would put in here as your current self-service success percentage. IVR cost per minute is really only applicable if you're using a hosted IVR solution, and the telco cost per minute is, most likely your customers are reaching you on a 1-800 number, toll-free number, and that, of course, is the telco cost per minute that you're paying for that number. If you can take users from the voice channel to the visual IVR channel, or from your IVR to your visual IVR is data, so you're not using up your toll-free minutes as customers are calling. So there is a savings there as well. And then the cost of your agent voice call. So need to be clear, this is your fully loaded agent cost and expressed per minute. And fully loaded is defined by your organization, typically includes a full overhead behind an agent, including a fractional facilities portion, etc. So that's your agent call cost per minute. On the right-hand side, in this little panel that you see here, inbound calls, you need to take a minute just to think of how are my customers reaching me? When they phone me, how did they phone me? And there's really sort of broadly 4 ways that they're going to phone you. The first is because they're already logged into your web self-service site or your website. And in that early example I showed you, I was on the travel site and I clicked the contact button to find your phone number. So there are a percentage of people that will be logged in to the web self-service site and they're going to reach out for the contact number and try and phone you. There's a certain number of your users who have a mobile app when they're already on the mobile app and they decide they need to talk to you, and they're going to look for the contact button, the contact hyperlink, or the phone number. So there are a percentage of those users. Then there's the percentage that do the web search, the Googlers, as I would call them. These are the ones who I need to phone company X, let me Google them and find their phone number. And that's probably a large, surprisingly large number of people coming into your organization that way. I know I do that often. I just Google you, find your number, and then try and call you. So that's certainly a very viable way of reaching your organization. And then finally, there are a number of people who are going to reach you based on knowing your number. That might be that they have the bill in front of them, they have the credit card in front of them, they have an invoice, or they have you already in your speed dial, which by itself is probably not a good sign. But there is a number of people that's going to have your number. We can't really affect that percentage of the population because they're going to call your voice call center right off the bat. They already have your number. But we can certainly affect these 3 coming in via Googling you that are on your website or on your mobile app. So you would adjust these sliders to indicate what you believe the numbers are in your organization, and just pay attention. Of course, this should not exceed 100%, so feel free to adjust the sliders as you wish, but that should add up to 100% in terms of the way people are reaching you. On the Assumptions tab, this is where you get to play what if. And you can try different combinations and permutations. And if you don't agree with the numbers, we've put down, you can lower them, you can increase them, and just try different options, best case scenario, worst case scenario, and so forth. So the first assumption is the Visual IVR usage percentage. So this is of the people we could potentially offer Visual IVR to, how many of them would actually take us up on the Visual IVR? So to put that in context, anybody coming in from your web self-service site on your mobile or Googling you to get your number, of those people who come in, we're saying 80% of them will use the Visual IVR option if presented to them. And the other 20% are going to proceed onto a straight voice IVR experience. So obviously you can adjust this as you see fit. Then we've got the Visual IVR self-service success percentage. So if you recall on the first tab, we said, what's your current percentage in your IVR, your self-service success percentage in your IVR? And you listed this as 35%. So we're saying when you go to Visual IVR, let's increase the self-service percentage to 37%. So in other words, we're saying very modestly, we expect the self-service capabilities to be 2% better than your current IVR. And obviously that's a very conservative estimate. I would think that with a visual experience and being able to go back and entering alphanumeric data, that the self-service experience should be better. But yeah, just for purposes of this model, we're saying 2% better, and obviously you can increase that if you want to try different options. And then the number of Visual IVR transfers avoided. So this is by the fact that my routing will now be better. I can try the different menu options. I can click back easily and step up through the visual options and make sure I go down the right path. Because of that, when I reach an agent, if I do choose to reach an agent, I'm probably at the right agent versus being bounced internally to another agent. And we're estimating a 10% save on that internal bounce rate here, and saving about a minute a call with that bounce rate as well. So those are the assumptions, those are the inputs. Behind the scenes, we'll just give you some details on the calculations and how they're made, and we can explore those time permitting. But certainly, when you download this calculator for yourself or just use the online version, you can look at these numbers in some more detail. So what this gives you, once you sort of set up all these assumptions and inputs, is you will see in the tab below your savings and your return on investment. So a couple of things to point out. This is your cumulative 3-year savings, and that's your net savings after we subtracted the actual cost of implementing the Visual IVR technology. So this is your net savings over a 3-year period. And I will point out, I'm not using a sort of technology adoption curve here. It's assuming sort of just this straight up adoption. Obviously, you might find an adoption curve, but your net 3-year savings results would still show the same savings, assuming you get full adoption over that 3-year period. So in this example of our company of 60,000 calls per month with 4 minutes per call, we see pretty significant savings over the 3 years. And bear in mind, this is not a large company. This is approximately 150 to 180 agents, and seeing a pretty good savings here over the 3-year period by just reducing more calls to the call center, increasing the self-service options, and reducing the bounce rates. On the right-hand side here, you can actually see how the savings are accomplished and how we break them down. If you hover over it, it'll tell you how those savings are comprised. And of course, here you can see a large part of the savings is just minutes deflected out of your existing IVR, because you're paying that IVR cost. And if we can take those IVR minutes and use them in Visual IVR and not use phone charges, not use IVR charges, it's clearly a big win. And avoiding agent calls, by every call saved is a lot of money saved. So we can certainly save a lot on the agent calls. And then ultimately looking at the transfers avoided. Not a massive component behind the ROI, but still a component behind the ROI by avoiding that internal bounce rate. And of course, that's a better customer experience, but here we're just looking at the hard ROI. So certainly try the ROI calculator. You can play with these sliders. You'll see as I slide them, things will change visually. and you can try your different what-if scenarios. Play with your adoption. If you think your IVR adoption will be lower, or if you think that you're going to get more success in the IVR, clearly if I move this up, it's got a massive impact on savings. You can see my 3-year savings are approaching $400,000 a year if I get a 41% adoption in my Visual IVR self-service channel. So these numbers, just by making slight changes, can obviously have big impacts. But as you try and make a business case internally to your organization, it's certainly a good idea to try, your best guess, try a worst case scenario, try a best case scenario, just map out a couple of options, and you're obviously going to land somewhere in between, but it's a good ballpark and a good start to getting a sense of what kind of ROI you can get by starting to deflect people out of your IVR into a Visual IVR and providing this Visual IVR on your website as well as your mobile. So I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint, and Lee, if you can give me a audio confirmation that you can see the PowerPoint.
Yes, we're back in the PowerPoint now.
All right, great. And in your chat window, you will see that Lee has sent out the link to the Visual IVR calculator. So by all means, try that out. And if you have any questions, just email us, and we will absolutely help you walk through that and show you some of the math behind the scenes if you have questions as to how we're deriving some of those values. So I hope that helped and give you a sense of the savings that are inherently possible moving through to a visual channel, and certainly encourage you just to play with it. You don't need to register to get to that calculator. You can just click the link and start playing. And if you have questions, reach out to us. The business case is hopefully made clear behind the ROI alone, but this one is one of those rare technology opportunities where there's benefits for your customer and benefits for your business. It's not an either or. On the customer side, your customer is not really caring about your ROI model, but let's look at the customer's benefits. It's much easier to navigate visually. I don't have to listen to those complete menu trees. I can get quick access to the information I need. I can hit the back button when I need to go up. It's just a lot easier than listening to those long menu trees. So as a customer, I would certainly find that more of a pleasant experience. The no repeating of information, it's really kind of a pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure for many of you on the call, if you don't get the screen pop and you ask me for everything I just entered in the IVR, I kind of have this natural inclination or even natural resentment of why did you ask me for all that information if you're not really using it. So now have that information available, because we do offer the ability to give you this rich screen pop that shows you everything that the person did during their Visual IVR session, whether that's on the website or on the mobile side. And then just a better customer experience, offering reduced call times, reduced hold times, because at the end of my IVR, Visual IVR experience, we can display the wait time and say, it's 10 minutes waiting time. Would you like to hold or would you like to have a callback? So you can certainly give a better customer experience. And then the benefits for your business, I think we've looked at those pretty well just by virtue of the fact that we looked at the ROI calculator, but it is dramatically reduced costs, less zero outs, lower IVR and telephony charges, and then reduced call time. So this is actually quite key. By providing that rich screen pop and preventing the agent from starting a triage right up front again, it's a lower average handle time. We save precious seconds by having that information available. And the fact that your routing has now improved, less zero outs, means that you've got the right agent to solve your job. And then ultimately an easy implementation. It was a key design goal that we want to recognize the investment you've made in your IVR, recognize the importance of the IVR and the great strides you've made on your IVR, but say, look, let's take that IVR and just extend its reach out into both the mobile and the web channel, providing this visual interface on your IVR. So you don't have an additional set of scripts to maintain. You're not creating a new set of customer interactions. We are reusing what you have today. So with that concludes the presentation. We do have a number of questions that we will get to. Lee will moderate those questions. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask them as well. And as I mentioned, if we don't get to them, we will certainly respond to you via email as well. So Lee, I will hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for your valuable insights on Visual IVR and on the ROI of investing in a Visual IVR. As Chris stated earlier, I've already posted the link to the ROI calculator in the chat window, so you can go ahead and click on that and play with it and adjust it to your particular scenario. Meanwhile, we'll now answer a few questions that are already in our Q&A window. Let's see, we have several. So the ones we can address today, we'll respond to your emails and respond to your questions directly to get all those answers to you. The first question we have here, Chris, it says, it's referring to the calculator, I believe. On the behind the scenes, you showed the number of calls deflected to the Visual IVR. Can you explain how that was calculated?
Sure, and that viewer had a keen eye to see that tab that quickly. So the behind the scenes, we were showing the calls deflected to the Visual IVR. It's based on two sets of the input parameters. What you first specify is how many users we have the option of offering Visual IVR to. And the example I'd used was people who are using your bill or your invoice and who have your number and are going to call you directly. We don't have an option really of offering them Visual IVR at that moment. So it's the other users, the ones who come in through Google, who come in through your website, who come in from your mobile app. Those are the users that we get a chance to offer Visual IVR. So we take those users, and then from those users, we take a percentage that we think might use Visual IVR if offered to them. So it's a percentage of a percentage, and that ultimately is what the number of calls deflected to the Visual IVR is.
Okay. The next question also regarding the calculator. It says, on the bar chart, the savings grow every year. Is this because you expect adoption to increase, and where do I see that?
Yeah, it may, it's not, it's assuming adoption right up in year one. It's not taking a technology adoption curve into consideration. But your net 3-year savings, if you assume that your technology will be adopted over the 3 years, will be the same. So what you might find sort of in practice is maybe a lower first-year savings, and then the savings sort of increasing and ultimately reaching the same point over a 3-year savings if you want to factor in a technology adoption.
Okay, that's good. Now we have lots of questions coming in. This is great. I just want to make sure that you know that we will respond to you as soon as the event ends. So the next question, Chris, I see a few folks are actually a little new to Visual IVR. So the next question says, what if our IVR doesn't use XML?
Yes, we chose VXML or Voice XML really as an internal standard, just because that's what all IVR players seem to be migrating towards. So there's a good chance most IVRs do or will support VXML. If it doesn't, there's still a very good chance we can work with it, provided it gives us some level of metadata, if you will, to be able to convert in real time to the Visual IVR. So we have worked with non-VXML, and really it's going to depend on your specific implementation.
So this next question actually may have sort of been answered in that last response, but to make things very clear, the next question, the person asks, in order to get Visual IVR, do they have to replace their existing IVR system?
No, absolutely not. I mean, what we want to do is make Visual IVR a companion to your IVR. So the whole idea is to use your IVR and, in fact, reuse your IVR to give you the Visual IVR capabilities.
Okay. Let's see. The next question is, it says, in the example provided based on a company of about 150 FTE, what would the initial investment be as an estimate?
Okay, sure. So yeah, in my calculator, I'd say it's around 150 agent company. From an investment perspective, you have different options. We have different licensing models. So you can either do a transaction-based pricing, which means that your cost is only based on the adoption that you're getting from your customers. So it's kind of the lower risk approach, if you will. If you want to see what adoption is like, go with the transaction pricing. And then alternatively, you can also do a perpetual concurrent session-based pricing. So to figure out what that total investment would be, you would have to make a gauge as to what kind of concurrent sessions you're expecting on the IVR. So certainly, feel free to follow up with us for more detailed pricing information. But at this level, I do want to let you know you can either go transactional pricing or a perpetual concurrent session pricing, whichever fits better with your environment.
Okay. Our time is growing short. We have two more questions we're going to respond to, and the rest we'll get to you. We'll respond to you via email. The next question says, we use pre-recorded voice prompts in our IVR tree. So what do you do about these?
Yeah, it's not uncommon to see IVR scripts that reference pre-recorded sound files. So it might reference, greeting.wave or .mp3. What you have to do in those cases is a one-time exercise of mapping those audio files to a corresponding visual prompt. It's a very quick exercise, and it's a one-time initiative. So if you are using a lot of pre-recorded prompts, what we will do is go through your script just as a one-time exercise and do some mapping of those audio prompts. So really not a problem.
Okay. And our last question along the same lines, since you mentioned voice prompts, does this work only in English, or what about other languages?
Oh, it's language neutral. We ourselves don't really concern ourselves with the language, and really what I mean by that is we're not trying to parse the audio prompt. So we're going to use what your current IVR is using in whichever language it's using. So we try and remain, language agnostic. So certainly not a problem to work with multiple languages. Okay.
Well, once again, Chris, thank you for your valuable information. This concludes our webinar, the ROI of making your IVR visual. If there are any questions that we weren't able to answer during today's session, we will respond to those directly after the event. We hope that you gain valuable insight into Visual IVR and how you can easily utilize it to enhance your organization's IVR. A replay of the event will be available soon on Jacada.com. If you'd like to get a copy of the slide decks, please contact me directly at ljudge@Jacada.com. Thank you for attending today. Please visit us again and have a wonderful day.